The Education of OverSoul7 by Jane Roberts, read by Martin John. The final chapter. The end of this particular examination, 7 graduates. He learns something about himself and discovers who wrote this book. 7 grimaced and began the final portion of his examination. It was entitled Comprehension. Lydia comprehends a lot, he said to Cyprus. Proteus is learning, and so is Maha. Joseph certainly has made great strides. I mean, he's really painting, and he relates to people better than he ever did before. But will he have a time with Lydia? I mean, Tweety? She'll teach him a thing or two, and it serves him right. That's not a very nice attitude, Cyprus said. I imagine Tweety can learn quite a bit from him, too, and from Bianca. But I'm worried about several things, 7 admitted. Maha doesn't know her origin, and, he looked down, I seem to have forgotten it myself. Proteus doesn't understand how the teller's dig went undiscovered all those centuries, much less why the floaters haven't found it now. Yes, Cyprus said. Well, I don't understand how I knew enough to lead Maha and Rampa to the speakers to begin with. Keep going, Cyprus said. I can't. Something else is wrong, 7 said moodily. This whole scene I've chosen, the classroom and benches. It was fun in the beginning, but it doesn't fit now. I don't even like the wastepaper basket anymore. Worse, I've been so busy that I suspect I've missed several important issues. And so far, you aren't helping me one bit. Impatiently, 7 waved his hand, and the entire scene vanished. Now he and Cyprus stood, invisibly, in Maha's 35,000 BC courtyard. I have the feeling that there's something here that I still don't understand, 7 said. You just made up several points by making this move, Cyprus said. Very astute. I did? 7 said. That reminds me of something else. Do you mind if I bring my analogy back? Not at all, Cyprus answered. That's a very good idea, only don't let it run away with you this time. 7 grinned sheepishly. Once more, in the skyscape, the glittering letters appeared. Past time equals P little p plus P little r plus P little f. Present time equals P r little p plus PR plus little pr plus PR little f. Future time equals F little p plus F little pr plus F little f. Do you remember what the letters meant? 7 asked. Indeed I do, Cyprus said quickly, and I certainly hope you do, too. There's just one problem, 7 said, but wait. And above the letters, 7 projected 3 boxes representing the 3 kinds of time with their 3 subdivisions. Past time is one box with also present, past, and future. The middle box is present time, present, past, and future, and the box on the right is future time, present, past, and future. Now just give me a moment, 7 said. And what? Cyprus said, with mock shock. Well, in my present state of development, it takes time to understand the nature of time. In your what state of development? Don't you see, 7? Her words rang through Seven's mind, and in some indescribable way his mind expanded. Barrier after barrier, previously invisible and unfelt, dropped away, until Seven's comprehension itself encompassed everything he saw or knew or perceived. His consciousness circled the analogy in the sky, and he went through it, finding that all these times were different appearances of one inexpressible experience in which all happening out of itself kept newly, freshly happening. All of his boxes merged, they changed into circles, in which other circles and times were constantly happening. And the circles changed into shapes of sound on the other side of silence, until the very breath of nothingness danced in time drops and light drops and finally thing drops, and out of the thing drops his boxes emerged, and out of the boxes came Lydia's time and Joseph's and Maha's and Proteus's and the tiles in the courtyard. And Seven shouted, "Oh, I've got it! The speaker's ruins were never discovered before Window's time because..." He was so excited that he projected his words outward so that the letters seemed to come out like minutes, one at a time, from his open boxes. The speaker's ruins didn't appear until the 23rd century because they weren't there earlier, because they were fresh action happening in the future of past time, and only then emerging in the past of the present time. They were brand new ruins. "Will you elaborate?" Cypress asked, smiling. "Of course. Oh, gladly," Seven said. "The 19th or 20th century ruins are underneath the new 35,000 BC ones because those appeared later from the future of past time, where there's always fresh action and new things happening. That's why Window couldn't figure it out. It's a complete dilemma in the framework of time as he understands it." Cypress said very softly, "Seven, remember, you create your own reality. We all do." "I know, you keep telling me," Seven said, somewhat impatiently. "What does that have to do with this?" "It has to do with other questions you haven't answered yet, and it all fits together. And it's a clue." "Oh, well then, let me see." "You make your own reality," Cypress said again, in the weirdest fashion, and suddenly the words rang in Seven's own mind, from within his own consciousness, not from outside it. And with that, Cypress disappeared. Yet in a microsecond that could have also been a century, Seven experienced a richness of being beyond any he had ever imagined, in what he was himself, or rather itself. He and Cypress were both participants in a multiplicity of selves, multiple existences rippling inward and outward like constellations. Each self was unique. Seven knew who he was, yet in experiencing Cypress he knew he was glimpsing only a portion of his own reality. His consciousness reeled. He couldn't grasp it all. Somewhere within him, Cypress laughed with the most delightful, brilliant understanding, and images appeared, sometimes inside him and sometimes outside him, until he could no longer keep track. And Seven's consciousness parted 4 times. In one he was Proteus, in the courtyard of the dig of the tellers. Window was beside him, And though 7 was Proteus, Proteus was himself an involuntary. And 7, far from above, saw the entire scene. Proteus's face was grave, yet full of excitement, and Window was looking at him with the eye of a father such as no boy ever had. "I know I'm on to something important," Proteus said. "From now on, I'm a teller too. The dig has secrets that no one's discovered, and I'm going to learn what they are. Sometimes, like now, I feel so close to knowing. I'm going to work with these sound-embossed tablets until I know them backwards. I think that the sounds themselves are far more important than we realize." Proteus looked up. He could feel himself teeter on the edge of some new comprehension that was still beyond his reach. It was twilight. As Window stood there, his skin seemed to absorb the blue of early evening, so that to Proteus he looked blue-green, almost fluid, joining the sky and the ground, growing into the sky like a figure-shaped tree for him, Proteus, to climb. What a weird idea, Proteus thought. For a moment he almost got dizzy, watching, because he did see through Window, as he explained it to himself later. Then Window seemed so physical that Proteus's stomach lurched, and he thought, "We grew up, reach up through blood and flesh as trees grow up or emerge from the flesh of the earth. So in leaving earth, man had left the growing medium of himself, and Proteus knew in that moment that he must help man return to the earth again, even if it meant returning sometime himself to the floating city. Admitting earth, man could travel and live wherever he chose. Denying it, he denied the heritage that gave him such yearnings." And experiencing Proteus's thoughts, 7 knew that he would descend again and again into flesh, for there was no descent or ascent, only being in its many forms. Proteus and Window vanished, and where they had been, Maha stood with Sumter. "I don't know where I came from. That's what it amounts to," Maha said. "I have no memory of parents, just finding myself with Rampa in the outside world a long time ago. How we got here I don't know. I suppose we were born into it. In certain terms, none of us know," Sumter said. "But I want to know. I insist on it," Maha cried defiantly, and 7 laughed. "And if I have a child, I won't know where it came from, not really," and 7 laughed louder. "Dear, dear Maha," he thought. "I thought I heard the old man," Maha said. "It's all right," 7 said to her, knowing that he was also reassuring a part of himself. But Maha said, "What's all right?" just as 7 had so often questioned Cypress. "And how did you direct me here with Rampa?" she asked. Before 7 could say, "I don't remember," he was suddenly back, lost in Maha again, struggling to walk beside Rampa, while the body signaled its great alarm. And a whispered voice that was his own and also Cypress's broke through only for a moment, telling him where to go and how to get there. Only then he hadn't been consciously aware of the voice, lost as he was in Maha's dilemma. But how did he or Cypress know? With the question came a new onslaught of images. Again he could only capture a few of them. Cypress, free of being male or female, containing both, writing the first sumari records of the speakers, writing them in sound before the birth of words in terms of time, but in a reality still happening. Images he could not decipher. Sounds that operated directly on matter, of course. A force field, protecting the land of the speakers, called into activation by Sumter, who was Window. But as Window, he'd forgotten what he knew, and it would be Proteus who would help him remember. And Joseph, 7 saw him swearing and painting, roaring, despairing. Heard him yell at the baby, Tweety, who screamed back at him just as lustily. 7 fell into Joseph briefly, looked out through the warm brown eyes, felt the intimacy of the buzzing flesh, looked at Bianca, who in this now was full of a form into which Tweety had not yet entered. "Will be left all of this," Joseph said with joyful craftiness. "The house, the land. And you'll grow fat and prosperous, I suppose, and give up painting," Bianca said, grinning. "No, no, never," Joseph thundered. But 7, as Joseph felt the divisions, the conflicts, saw. But then Joseph, as Joseph vanished, replaced by Joseph the speaker, painstakingly etching in stone the sumari pictures that would be found by Maha and Proteus in their times. And Lydia was story, and he, 7, had forgotten who he was and what he knew. Forgotten so that his parts could grow and learn on their own. Yet all the while, unknowingly, he nourished them as he was. Nourished by Cyprus, who had learned to remember, to teach with a light hand, and to learn gracefully. And the sounds of the speakers were an important key that Cyprus would help him decipher. 7's consciousness flew together, and then parted 7 times, in which he glimpsed Maha, Joseph, Lydia, Proteus, and, with surprise and wonder, Story, who would develop quite on her own as Tweety would and Lydia had, and Sumter, who was Window, each apart, yet whole, knowing and unknowing. And Cyprus's consciousness parted into such myriad shining realities of being that 7 could no longer follow, and he yelled out, "Cyprus!" She sat beside him by the tiles, changing form so swiftly that he said, "Now stop that. I've learned so much that I'm dizzy. I don't suppose you could have just told me." "Oh, 7. Told you? Forget I said it," he replied hastily. "Well, this examination is over," she said. "I thought you'd like to know." Cyprus paused, looking nowhere in particular, and added, "You passed, you know." "I'm too confused to think," he said. "And what about Maha's origin?" "I didn't answer that question yet." "That's for next time," she said. "Anyway, some questions can't be answered in the context of the question itself. You have to find a new context. Of course, the question itself is deeply symbolic." But 7 said, "Next time?" "In your terms of experience," Cyprus said gently. "Of course, in other terms." "Never mind," he said. "And if I'm correct, then you're to me as I am to Maha and Joseph and—" "Precisely," she said. "So, what did you do for this examination?" 7 asked. "I did all the work." Cyprus smiled. "I wrote this book," she said. "But Cyprus, you aren't physical," 7 cried. And Cyprus sighed. 7, you still have a lot to learn. End final chapter, and to follow will be the epilogue. Peace, light, and love. Aloha. This is the Epilogue. It is the epilogue to this book and prologue to the further education of OverSoul7. Cypress said, "This is how the next book will begin. Lydia was called Tweety because Bianca said she was skinny and tiny as a newborn bird." "Wait a second," 7 said. "I think your tenses are wrong. Even though Lydia died in the 20th century and is reborn in the 17th, shouldn't you say Lydia will be called Tweety because she hasn't experienced that life yet? Or is Lydia was called Tweety correct because people think that the 17th century happened first? Or—" They both burst out laughing. Cypress said, "You'll just have to wait and see. That is, though all time is simultaneous, I'll have to wait until writing the book catches up with my experience." End. Peace, light, and love. Aloha. There is an appendix, but I think you'll have to find that one on your own.